Okay, so what you're about to hear specifically 100% is not real. These words have never been spoken by any true people. Everything you're about to hear, this new podcast, is 100% AI generated, from the voices to what they're saying to the topics that they choose. All I did was take my YouTube video, Zelda 4 and Jeb, put the link into this new thing that Google has that it's helpful for studying or some shit, but it has this podcast feature. I'll put some videos in the description if you want to learn more about that or try it out for yourself. It's pretty fun. I plugged in the video and then it generated this podcast where, again, none of it is real. The voices aren't real. Every time they sound like they're thinking or trying to find the right words, or they're talking over each other. All of it is fake. None of that is real. They're not thinking. The whole time they're thinking is when it's generating. Before they start talking, they're not thinking. They thought already. Now they're just acting. It is 100% a performance, and it's really interesting. And this is the video where we talk about starting Talk 3. So I thought I'd plug it in and see what it says, mainly because it's so fucking funny. So please enjoy, but do be wary, and don't try to ever pass this shit off as real. This is all fake. None of this is real except for the Adventure Time clips. Also, because it's AI, there's a lot of shit that they say that just is inaccurate because it's AI and they misinterpret shit because it's AI. It's not real people. They're not really thinking about these topics and stuff. It's all fake. So if you hear stuff that isn't real, or if you hear stuff that isn't true to what was actually said or done in the video, that's why. I had no say in what they actually say. But yeah, be wary.
Welcome, everyone, to this new deep dive. We're doing something a little different today, looking at a transcript from Uncle Lloyd's YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's right. We're going past the usual research papers and articles we look at. This time we're going head first into Let's Plays and casual commentary.
We've all been there, right? It's late, we're watching our favorite gamers, and then bam, we're sucked into their conversations. That's what happened to me with Uncle Lloyd and his friend Jeb. They were playing Tears of the Kingdom, but it was how they went back and forth, their banter, that really got me.
It is really fascinating how much these off-the-cuff exchanges can tell us about the human experience.
Totally. That's what we're hoping to explore today. We've got the whole transcript from their Tears of the Kingdom playthrough. And trust me, it's a wild ride. We're talking about everything from, like, debates about Domino's pizza crust to analyzing slushy noobs.
And that's actually a great example of how this deep dive might connect with you, the listener. Think about your own friends. You have inside jokes, shared references, your own type of humor that maybe only you get. Uncle Lloyd and Jeb are the same way. They created this world where a crotula makes sense, even if it makes everyone else confused.
Oh, the crotula bit. So picture this. They're in the middle of this super intense puzzle, right? And Jeb just keeps telling Uncle Lloyd to grab the crotula. But of course, Uncle Lloyd has no idea what he's talking about because, well, a crotula doesn't exist.
And that shared absurdity, that willingness to just go with something so nonsensical, it makes their humor work. It's not about perfect punchlines or clever jokes. It's about that raw, unfiltered fun of laughing with your best friend, even if you two are the only ones who understand it.
It's like they're speaking this universal language of friendship. Logic takes a backseat to just making each other laugh.
Yeah. And it gets at that need for authenticity, which we all crave, especially when it comes to entertainment. We're drawn to those unscripted moments, those peeks into genuine connection, because they remind us of the simple joy of talking to another person.
It makes you wonder, is this type of humor even funnier? Because they're not trying to be funny, they're just being themselves. And in a world that feels so curated and polished, that realness, that authenticity is refreshing.
It's like we're listening in on a conversation between two old friends, and all of a sudden, you're in on the joke too, part of the inner circle. You feel a sense of intimacy and connection that we don't really get from those more polished comedy shows.
Speaking of connection, let's talk about this slushy noobs thing. They spend a good chunk of this transcript picking apart this YouTube duo's every joke, every video idea, every move.
And that fascination speaks to a bigger trend. This rise in parasocial relationships, especially now with online content creators. It's like we have a front row seat to this other person's life, their thoughts, everything.
For those of us who aren't glued to YouTube 24/7, break down what this parasocial relationship thing is. What does it even mean?
In the simplest terms, it's a one-sided bond we make with someone in media. Could be a YouTuber, podcaster, even some made-up character.
Oh.
You feel like you know them, you relate to them, maybe even consider them a friend, even though it's not a two-way street like a real friendship.
I see where you're going with this. Uncle Lloyd and Jeb, they feel close to slushy noobs. They constantly talk about their videos, even compare themselves to them. They admire their humor, their friendship, their success.
Exactly. They see a bit of themselves in slushy noobs. And it's interesting, the reason they're so into them is because of how authentic they seem. They see two normal guys making people laugh, and they want that same genuine connection with an audience.
And it's more than just empty admiration. They even joke about becoming the next slushy noobs. They even brainstorm their own podcast, Talk 3.
Which, when we think about it a bit more, actually shows a deeper level of self-awareness and ambition. They get the humor in copying the whole talk to naming thing, admitting that it wouldn't last. There's some self-deprecation there, a way of recognizing their own kind of niche humor.
It's like they're in on the joke of their own goals, which honestly makes it funnier. It's this meta-commentary on internet culture that's smart and relatable. They're playing into the tropes while also pointing them out. And really, who hasn't thought about starting a podcast with their best friend, even if it's just a dream fueled by late nights and a love for slushy noobs?
It is, yeah. It's that shared what if that really brings people together. And it is interesting how they walk that line between wanting something and knowing themselves.
Right. It's not all just online personalities and jokes, though. What got me was how much they think about their past. I mean, we're talking childhood memories, old TV shows like Steven Universe and Malcolm in the Middle, oh, even those classic video games.
It shows how nostalgia is this, like invisible string, tying us to who we used to be and to the people who were there with us. Those shared references, they become a way to get each other, to strengthen those bonds.
It's like a secret language almost, right? You mentioned a certain episode of Malcolm in the Middle, and boom, you're both back in that moment, feeling all the laughter and inside jokes all over again.
Exactly. Nostalgia has this power to bring back strong emotions, to remind us of where we came from. And when you share those memories, it makes that bond stronger, reminds you of the journey you took together.
And Uncle Lloyd, he goes off on this hilarious tangent. It's about some incident in the fourth grade cafeteria involves mashed potatoes, a kid, and a poorly timed burp. Like, it came out of nowhere, but they couldn't stop laughing.
And that's what's so great about these casual chats. These tiny, seemingly meaningless memories. They actually show us something deeper about someone, a glimpse into what shaped their sense of humor.
For sure. It really makes you wonder, what are those little memories that we all hold on to? What are the ones that, for whatever reason, just stick with us and shape how we see the world?
That's a fascinating question. Our brains, they're wired to remember things that made us feel strongly. Could be laughter, disgust, or even that pure fourth grade anger at a mashed potato disaster.
And talking about being vulnerable, there's a part where they get really real about their doubts and anxieties. Uncle Lloyd even wonders if their humor is too niche, too specific to just them.
Which, let's be real, a lot of us can relate to that,
Mm.
right? Wanting to be accepted, worrying that our humor won't land with a bigger audience. But the heartwarming part is how Jeb responds. He tells Uncle Lloyd straight up, they're the two funniest people he knows. Simple, but really meaningful when you think about it.
Exactly. It's that complete acceptance, that willingness to love each other's weirdness. They've built this space where they can be themselves, anxieties and all. It's honestly beautiful to see.
It is. And it reminds us how important it is to find those relationships in our own lives. Connections where we feel understood, where our humor, no matter how strange, makes someone laugh.
You know, for all their talk about slushy noobs and wanting to be podcast famous, there's this moment where they step back. They actually wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're a little too obsessed.
Which is a good point. Where's the line between liking something and being obsessed with it? It's the question we all kind of struggle with now with social media. Access and information are everywhere, so it's easy for entertainment to start feeling like a personal connection.
Right. It's like, how much is too much? When does enjoying someone's content turn into needing to know everything about their life?
It's tough. It's a balance. There's nothing wrong with loving someone's content, feeling connected to it, but we need to have those boundaries.
Good reminder to check in with ourselves sometimes. Are we engaging with content in a healthy way, or are we letting it take over our thoughts and feelings? Especially now, as our lives get more and more digital, we need to talk about this.
Absolutely. And how Uncle Lloyd and Jeb approach it is interesting. They see that they could become obsessive, but they also find it funny. It's like they're saying, we get how silly this is, And we're choosing to laugh at ourselves.
Which is honestly a really healthy way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And speaking of being silly, did you hear the part where Uncle Lloyd goes on this whole philosophical rant about the invention of pizza?
Oh, yeah. The classic "we've been up too late" philosophy moment.
Yeah.
It's easy to brush those off as just random thoughts, but there's often some real insight there if you listen closely.
I know. He's talking about how whoever invented pizza was a genius. How did they just know that stoners would one day be this huge group of people who could eat pizza forever?
It just goes to show wisdom can come from anywhere. It doesn't always have to be some fancy academic paper or philosophical debate. Sometimes it's in a conversation about pizza and video games at 2 in the morning.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of humor and insight in everyday life. The ones that seem small on the surface, but actually show us something true about ourselves and the world. But let's get back to their podcast dreams for a sec. They seem pretty set on this Talk 3 idea, even planning out guests and bits they could do.
It really is like they've put more thought into this than they let on.
Right. They've got it all planned out, even down to eventually just calling it Talk and dropping the 3 to mess with people. That mix of like really detailed planning and knowing how funny it is, it's what makes it work.
It does. It makes you wonder what makes people want to create things to put themselves out there, even if it's just for a few friends and people online.
Is it about wanting to connect with people? Or wanting to make them laugh? Or maybe just the fun of making something new, something that's all yours?
Probably a little bit of everything, to be honest. It's human nature to want to connect, to share what we're going through. And the world can feel pretty lonely sometimes. Creating something, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube video or even just a good conversation, it's a way to bridge that gap.
It's like you're saying, this is me, this is what I think is funny and interesting, and hey, maybe someone else will connect with it too.
Exactly. It's about finding your people, even if it's just a small group who gets your humor and your love for slushy noobs, apparently.
Speaking of, they start talking about slushy noobs again near the end. They imagine what it'd be like to meet them in person, to go from fans to actually hanging out, having a pizza, a real conversation.
Which takes us back to that blurry line between the internet and real life. We build these parasocial relationships, these connections that aren't two-sided. Sometimes we forget there's a screen there, a real distance between us and the people we've let into our lives.
It's weird, right? Fascinating, but a little weird. Makes you think about what it means to be a fan, how we connect now in the digital age. It's good and bad at the same time. We can connect with people who get us, find communities, share what we love. But, and this is a big but, we got to keep those boundaries. We have to remember those relationships. Even when they feel real, they happen in a certain context.
For sure. And I think Uncle Lloyd and Jeb, their conversation really shows that struggle. They know they could get obsessed, but they can also laugh at it.
They even joke about slushy noobs maybe thinking about them the same way. Funny, but kind of sad when you really think about it. It's like they know it's a one-way street, this whole fan thing, but that pull is still there.
It's the perfect example of what it means to have a parasocial relationship. It's complicated, there are layers to it, and it's probably going to become even more common as we spend more time online.
So we've gone deep into the world of Uncle Lloyd and Jeb. What's the takeaway here? What can we learn from these guys and their talks about video games, pizza, and trying to be internet famous?
I think the biggest thing is to appreciate those real, unplanned moments, the genuine connections we make online or in person. It's about finding what's funny in everyday life, being excited about the same things, and realizing that even those little conversations can teach us a lot about ourselves and the world.
It's about actually seeing the world, the people we talk to, the stories we tell. Because sometimes the most important things are right in front of us, hidden in a late-night YouTube video, a shared joke, or a deep dive into the hilarious, surprisingly wise world of Uncle Lloyd and Jeb. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep those conversations going, embrace the weirdness, and hey, maybe even try starting that podcast with your best friend. You never know what you might discover.
No wonder I feel 1,000